Last year I reviewed LG's tone-free FP8 and 9, which I think are some of the most underrated earbuds on the market. They have a great all-round feature set, and they're easily some of the most comfortable earbuds I've ever tested, so I was pretty optimistic about what this year's successor might offer. They're calling it the T90 or T90Q, so the naming system is still all over the place, but they combine the best of the FP8 and 9s into one pair of earbuds, plus they add in this year's new features as well. But perhaps more interesting than that is LG's entirely new sports model, the TF8. These also feature LG's signature UVnano tech, but offer a new wingtip design for a secure fit and boast a much higher water resistance rating. So we're going to get into all of the changes and improvements from last year's models, the differences between these two, and how they compare to the rest of the market. So we'll start with the unboxings, and straight away it's good to see lots of sustainable materials used for the packaging. There's literally no point in wasting money harmfully making the box look all fancy because who cares what it looks like? It's what's inside that counts, and it's good to see more companies in the industry adopting this approach. Inside the box you first get the earbuds themselves. We also have some different sized silicone ear tips as well as wingtips for the TF8. We then have two different cables, one USB-A to C for charging, and the other is a USB-C to aux cable for the plug and wireless feature, which we'll cover later. And finally we have the user manuals. So the charging cases are the first difference between the two models. There's the obvious shape and size difference, but the T90 has a smooth finish whilst the F8 has a textured finish, and both feel high quality. The 90s have essentially the same case design as last year's models, whereas the new F8 case is slightly larger to accommodate the wingtip design of the earbuds. They're otherwise quite similar though, with the battery and UV LEDs at the front, the switch to activate plug and wireless at the side, and the USB-C charging port at the rear. I like these cases because they're relatively small and compact, especially the T90s. The lids feel sturdy, and the earbuds snap nicely back into the case with a secure click, so the build quality is very good. One key difference is that only the T90s support wireless charging. Sadly the sports version doesn't, which is a shame. The earbud design is the single biggest factor separating these two models, because it affects the appearance, comfort, and the applications they can be used for. The T90 has that AirPods Pro stem design very similar to last year, whilst the larger F8 has a rounder Galaxy Bud style which, most importantly, has a wingtip to secure them in place for sports. The T90s are essentially just slightly larger versions of last year's FP9s and come with a new all-gloss finish, but they maintain that super comfortable form factor from before, which are recently praised in the True Wireless Earbuds Awards. Sure enough, when you put these in your ears you can immediately feel the difference. The T90s are smaller, lighter, and just gently rest in your ears. I think last year's model just edged these for comfort, but these are still some of the most comfortable earbuds on the market and can be worn for hours on end. The F8s are not exactly bulky either, but you do feel the larger size and extra weight. Thanks to the wingtips though, these are much more secure, and easily the better choice for sports. They also have an IP67 protection rating, so that's for dust and even submersion underwater, whereas the T90 only has an IPX4 rating, which means no dust protection and only sweat and splash resistance. There's always a comfort trade-off with wingtips since there's more of the earbud that pushes against your skin, but what you get in return is, at least for me, an unshakable fit that's ideal for exercising. It's not just the wingtip though, it's the shape of the earbud too that I find provides a really secure fit. I quite like that these wingtips are vented as well to allow for more airflow during workouts. A combination of the large ear tips and medium wingtips gave me the best balance of comfort and grip, and these were absolutely fine to wear for a couple of hours. Certainly for longer listening sessions though, the T90s are the better option. The F8's tighter seal in the ear also leads to greater passive noise isolation from your surroundings, although with the larger ear tips the T90s do a pretty decent job with this as well. Incidentally, the ear tips themselves are slightly different between models. They're the usual round shape for the sports model, but the 90s are oval shaped. They also have ridges inside which makes them super easy to swap in and out. The ear tips gently click into place, a handy design I really wish all earbuds used. It's a little more tricky with the F8s, although swapping wingtips is nice and easy. There's a marker on the earbud to help get them lined up perfectly each time. The T90's touch controls are essentially identical to last year. There's a small raised dot so you can feel where to tap on the earbud, the controls are very responsive and give a gentle click when tapped. The larger surface of the F8s mean the touch controls are a bit easier to use here, and I also like that both of these have wearing detection for auto-pausing and playing your music. LG's excellent companion app provides good customization for the controls too, allowing you to individually assign controls to each side. You can also toggle the wearing detection feature and lock the touchpad controls, which is especially useful when exercising to avoid any accidental touches. You'll also see a nicely illustrated user guide, including for how to correctly wear the earbuds. For the T90 there's also an ear tip fit test to help ensure you're getting the optimal listening experience, though it's unclear why this isn't available for the sports model. The lab features return from last year as well, and both new models get LG's game mode. Game mode actually works really well, and there's a noticeable reduction in latency when you turn it on. But interestingly, this is much more effective on iOS compared to Android. So on my iPhone, I had no issues with watching videos, and game mode allowed me to enjoy even fast-paced games like COD Mobile. On Android, it was a different story, and there's still a visible delay even with game mode on. I actually found myself keeping game mode turned on to improve the lip sync issues with YouTube videos, so that's likely a codec problem for Android phones. Whisper mode also makes a return, but again only for the T90s. This limits the mic to the right earbud only, and allows you to whisper into it for clearer calls in loud environments, or simply to have a more private conversation. A brand new lab feature available on both models though is an always-on option for UVnano. In case you aren't aware, UVnano is LG's signature earbuds feature, which uses UV light to kill up to 99.9% of bacteria on the earbud speaker mesh, and now the ear tip as well, in just 5 minutes. The feature works seamlessly behind the scenes when you place the case on charge, but the new always-on option means you can now activate it every time you close the lid, not just when charging. Combining this feature with hypoallergenic ear tips, it's clear that LG is placing a focus on hygiene, which companies don't often do. So if you're someone who is prone to ear infections, or just concerned about earbud hygiene, then you especially might be interested in the earbuds USP. Now the final main app feature before we move on to the sound quality is for controlling the listening mode. The transparency mode is once again excellent, though largely unchanged from last year. It very clearly amplifies your surroundings, and there are 2 different modes to choose from. Conversation mode is supposed to amplify voices specifically, which it doesn't really do. Everything is just generally more amplified, but it's nice to have 2 different modes to choose from. As for the noise cancelling, this is also essentially unchanged, so if you're looking for a big ANC upgrade over last year, you're not going to find that here. The T90 is supposed to have enhanced adaptive ANC that works even when the earbuds don't fit precisely in your ears, but I couldn't hear any big improvement compared to the TF8 or last year's models. The only thing that stood out to me is that there's no longer a hissing sound with ANC, so that's actually a small improvement. Otherwise the noise cancelling is decent, though not amazing. There are lots of other earbuds that perform better here, in particular with regards to wind reduction. But if you can get a good fit with these and a tight seal, then they should block out a lot of sound passively. I personally find the sports model are much better with this due to their shape. I also like that there's a clear and distinctive tone that's played when you change modes on the earbuds. It doesn't really interrupt your music, but can still be clearly heard, and you can now choose which modes to cycle between in the app. In general, the LG app experience is excellent. It offers a nice and clean user interface, is feature-packed, and even has small quality of life perks like battery tracking, and automatically sorting the app features based on their usage. Speaking of battery life, you're looking at up to 9 hours for the T90 and up to 10 hours for the TF8, dropping down to 5 and 6 hours respectively if you're using ANC. Both offer around 30 hours in total, which is not bad, but the ANC does seem to drain the battery quite a lot compared to the competitors. The T90's battery life has actually dropped slightly from last year, which is surprising given their slight size increase. Both of these provide an hour of playback from a 5-minute fast charge, and again it's only the T90 that supports wireless charging. Now for connectivity, this is where we get some of the earbuds' best features. In terms of codecs, it's just SBC and AAC for the TF8, but the T90s also get aptX Adaptive with Snapdragon Sound. This is the new codec that's supposed to deliver higher quality sound, improved calls, and lower latency, as long as you pair the earbuds to a Snapdragon Sound phone. I've talked about this in great detail in my Neobuds S review, one of the first pairs of earbuds to feature Snapdragon Sound, and the upshot was that at the moment there are simply too few phones that support it for it to be worthwhile. If you have a newer Xiaomi or Oppo phone, then great, you might be able to benefit from this. But most of us won't be able to use it, so I wouldn't say it's a big upgrade at all. We do however get the latest Bluetooth 5.3, which your phone probably doesn't even have yet, and the super useful Google Fast Pair. This gives you very quick and easy setup on your Android phone, and the earbuds will actually sync to all of your devices signed into the same Google account, kind of like AirPods with iCloud accounts. It also gives you location tracking with maps, and battery tracking built directly into Android, so iPhone users do miss out on a couple of cool features. They don't miss out on the 2 best features though, one of which returns from the FP9s, which is plug and wireless. So using that USB-C to aux cable, you can plug the case into even older devices and then stream its audio directly to the earbuds. This is great for devices like aeroplane TVs and my old iPod Shuffle, which doesn't have Bluetooth itself, but I can bypass this by routing the audio through the case instead. The feature is incredibly simple to use. You just plug in, flick the switch on the case, and the audio switches over automatically. When you're done, you can flick the switch back and carry on listening to the music on your phone. But my favourite feature is brand new this year and was at the #1 spot on my wishlist from last year, which is of course Multipoint. And actually, I think this is the best version of Multipoint I've used yet. There's first of all no need to press pause on the first device before pressing play on the other. Whichever phone or device I press play on is the device the earbuds switch over to receive audio from. Better still, if I'm listening to music on one but get a call on the other, the music automatically pauses so you can hear the call coming in before answering. As soon as you press to hang up, the audio automatically switches back and the music resumes. You don't need to touch your phone once. This has worked for me with tablets, phones, computers, both PC and Mac, and makes the earbuds really convenient to use. If I were to pick one minor criticism, it's that the earbuds aren't very good at reconnecting to both devices automatically. When I take them out of the case, they typically just reconnect to one device, normally the first one I pair with, and I have to prompt the second connection. Fortunately, it's very easy to do this on the LG app. All of your recently paired devices will appear in this spider web-like layout, and from here you can select and manage devices to connect to. It's a really well thought out system. It's for me the best upgrade over the FP8 and 9s, and is so far putting most of the other Multipoint earbuds to shame. Oh, and this works on both the new T90 and TF8, just in case that wasn't clear.
Now with phone calls, there is a slight improvement with the new T90Qs. They now have 4 pairs of mics and a new voice pickup unit, and what I notice most is the improvement in isolation. I'm in a reasonably noisy environment, but the earbuds are doing a pretty decent job of isolating my voice from the traffic noise behind me. Switching over to the older FP9, hopefully you can hear how the background noise isn't quite as well isolated. I'd say that my voice is perhaps not as loud with the T90Q, but since the isolation is better, they're usually the best option for calls in louder environments. And finally, switching to the TF8Q, these weren't quite as good as either the 90Q or the FP9s, which I suspect is due to them not having that longer stem design where the mic is closer to your mouth. They still do a decent job with calls, but I noticed some muffling of my voice, and the isolation from the background noise wasn't quite as good either.
And finally, let's talk about audio quality, where there are really just some subtle tweaks from last year. The T90s have new 11mm graphene drivers, which are not only larger than last year's and deliver more powerful bass, but they also reduce vibrations to provide cleaner and more accurate sound. You can certainly hear that in the bass response, which is deeper but more controlled, and that's the biggest change from the FP9s. But strangely, I'd actually say that the mid-range, and vocals in particular, are a bit more crisp and clear with the older model. The sound quality differences are very subtle, and I think you'll get the best listening experience pairing the new earbuds to a Snapdragon sound phone for that high-res quality. But again, only a small number of phones offer this. The FP9 sound really good, though not spectacular like the market leaders, and I can pretty much say the same again for the T90. Once again, the treble boost EQ sounds the best for music, 3D soundstage is a cool immersive mode for movies and games, and listening with ANC mode still gives a slight boost to the volume and bass. As for the TF8, these sound even closer to last year's model, and I'd say the T90 offers slightly more bass and volume in comparison. There's a little bit more detail in the highs as well, so it's almost like the 90s have a V-shaped EQ, whereas the sports model are perhaps a bit more balanced. It's likely due to the differences in the driver, but the sound quality differences are still quite subtle. The bass thumps pretty hard despite having smaller drivers, and they give a pleasant, possibly slightly warm sound signature that I'm sure most people will have nothing to complain about. If you already own one of last year's models, then there's no need to upgrade based on the sound quality alone. But if you're looking for that same good quality but in a sports earbud, that's exactly what the TF8 offers. Now, one new and exclusive feature to the T90 is Dolby Atmos and head tracking. This is claimed to be a world's first for Dolby Atmos wireless earbuds, and it's pretty obvious that this is intended as an AirPods Pro spatial audio competitor. You can now create a virtual surround sound-like effect, where the audio appears to be directed towards you from all around your head, and with head tracking enabled, the earbuds will change the directionality of the audio according to your position. The feature works pretty well, although occasionally the shifting of the audio between the left and right earbuds as you turn your head can be quite sudden and obvious, especially on iOS, whereas I found it was a bit more subtle with Android. It's definitely a cool and immersive experience to try out, but just like with spatial audio on AirPods, I personally think for music, the experience is better with this turned off. So for me, it's not a deal breaker feature, but it is something that's new this year and exclusive to the T90 model. The T90s are launching at $199.99, so they keep the same price point as last year's FP9s, whilst the sporty TF8 will be $179.99. I said last year that LG's FP9s are a fantastic, yet often overlooked, all-rounder, so with the T90 closing the gap on flagship models with additions like Multipoint and improvements to the mic and sound quality, they're now a serious contender for being the best all-round earbuds on the market. Their signature UVnano feature helps to distinguish them from the rest of the competition. They're some of the most comfortable earbuds out there, but they can now compete across the board with the other specs and features too. When you look at the overall changes and improvements from last year's models, I'm not sure there's anything that would force me into upgrading straight away. but combining plug-and-wireless and wireless charging into the same pair of earbuds was a very sensible move, and adding in that excellent Multipoint feature has ticked a major empty box from last year. So the T90 are a much more compelling overall package that actually undercut a lot of the market leaders for price. The one that stands out the most is Apple's $250 AirPods Pro, and there's no doubt that LG are trying to compete directly with those. The feature sets are eerily similar, from new additions like Dolby Atmos head tracking, to reading out your phone's notifications, to the very shape and size of the earbud itself. The T90s are, by far, the closest competitor to AirPods Pro, and by surpassing them in so many areas, it's easy to consider them the real AirPods killer. In spite of Apple's exclusive H1 benefits for iPhone users, it's hard to argue against LG being the better option overall. The T90s sound better, are more customizable and feature-rich, and are certainly a better value option for Android users. That's a no-brainer. But even if you're an Apple user, you should seriously consider the cheaper, but better, T90s instead. As for the TF8, there's a small list of exclusive T90 features that the sports model miss out on, but none of those is a deal breaker in my opinion, and they still have pretty much all of the best features anyway. As a sports earbud, they actually perform really well. They have a very secure fit, great water and dust resistance, but they sound basically just as good as the flagship T90. There's really not very much to complain about, and these are definitely one of the best sports earbuds available right now. LG may not have the most effective noise cancelling, the longest battery life, or the best sounding earbuds, which may be why they often get overlooked, but considering the overall package, these earbuds are tough to beat. People often get drawn towards big names like Sony, Bose, and Samsung for earbuds, so I wonder if this year will be the year that LG finally gets the recognition it deserves, because there's no doubt that their earbuds are well worth considering. Let me know in the comments if you'd buy a pair of LG earbuds, and if you think there's a better all-round pair of earbuds right now, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that too. Give this video a like if you found it helpful, and subscribe with notifications turned on so that you stay up to date with everything on the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.